So during today's session, we're going to talk about how a chicken brand took its tech from beginner to advanced in just 2 years. Again, thank you all for coming to the session sponsored by Paytronix. In case you all don't know who Paytronix is, we are an all-in-one guest engagement platform. We work with many different sizes and styles of clients, like you can see on this slide here. Every single one of our clients uses the same Paytronix software, and like I said, all-in-one guest engagement. I'm Kristin Lynch, Director of Strategy and Analytics at Paytronix, and I'm joined today by Ken Bott with PDQ. Ken is amazing, first of all. Ken is a seasoned executive that has developed and executed strong loyalty and digital platforms and programs for many years. He is currently the Senior Director of Digital Strategy at PDQ. Ken leads digital and loyalty marketing efforts for PDQ and really does a great job getting them strong success for their bottom line. He's responsible for defining all digital and loyalty from concept to launch and everything after that, and specifically the latest digital transformation for the PDQ business. But before we get into that specific topic, a little bit more about Ken. Ken, I know you live in Florida. I know you live on a golf course. I also know that you kicked everybody's butt last night at Topgolf, but what more should we know about you?
Well, clarify, seasoned means old.
I didn't mean it that way.
I'm in charge of all strategy decisions, which means there's not very many of us, so small footprint of people within the organization. But hey, that's a great question. And I probably shouldn't tell you and admit it because some people might find it embarrassing, but I am an aviation geek. So I literally wake up on Saturday mornings and will watch Big Jet TV. If you haven't never checked that out on YouTube, freaking awesome. Other things, like earlier this week, what does somebody do at 5 a.m.? Well, you have, your alarm go off on your watch and you turn on the Everyday Astronaut and watch, Falcon rocket get blasted off into space with Starlink satellites in it, right? So that's kind of like my nerdy pleasure of, and if you've ever been like to a rocket launch, if you haven't been, go. It's freaking cool.
Do you wear earplugs for these events?
No.
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 Okay. And you can still hear everything after?
No. No.
Awesome. So the next slide, I'm going to forget to do slides, but many folks may not know about PDQ Chicken. So can you tell all the folks in the audience about the awesome brand?
Yep. So first of all, PDQ means people dedicated to quality, right? It's one of the hospitality elements that our brand was founded on. Been around a little bit more than 10 years, 62 locations, primarily in Florida. End up having some locations in North Carolina, South Carolina, and then Jersey and New York. And then I'm trying to think of the other elements really are about the quality elements of our experience, right? Between hospitality and food. We're positioned more as a premium QSR, fast casual experience if you go inside the restaurant, and then more of a quality kind of interaction with guests even through the drive-through. We don't have squawk boxes. We have windows where people actually order food from a person even for the drive-through. So that's kind of like the hallmarks of our brand really from a hospitality standpoint, and high touch with the guest.
Awesome. So I mentioned the pandemic, so I want to start from the very beginning. So it's the beginning of a pandemic. You're probably sitting in a conference room or you're at home now doing Zoom meetings, and you're thinking about how do we take PDQ and we pivot to a digital infrastructure. What's going through your head? What are you talking about with the team?
Well, so I'll back up just a little bit to give a little bit more context. So pre-COVID, we had 100 units. Post-COVID, we have 62 units. So there was an awful lot of anxiety with the owners of the brand and really trying to figure out how to really flex and save the business, right? We had supply chain problems, distribution problems, COVID problems, right, with not being able to get people through into our doors, such that the organization shrank, right, out of necessity. But when I was recruited to come in and work for PDQ, it was really like, how fast can you get things going, right? It was like they wanted somebody who could sign up to get everything out the door in a couple of months. So I signed up. And so what we did was, first off, is figure out, well, what's the purpose of why we're here? We need to go digital, yeah, but you've heard it in a number of the other conversations that we've had over the past couple of days, is really focusing on who are we trying to satisfy, right? We're trying to make sure we're delighting our guests, not only with our food, but with our service. So putting Sandy, who's our archetype of one of the guests that we have, who's got 2 small kids and a husband, at the center of things, right? We also have another archetype that's Joe Lunchbox. No offense to those named Joe or have a lunchbox, but just being able to identify a core customer that we want to make sure we're addressing the needs for. So trying to figure out where those touch points are, what kind of resources do we need? What kind of technology do we want to lead with? What kind of investment do we have to be able to provide, right? There's cost associated with any or all of that stuff. So those were the kind of the hard discussions. And so, my job was to come up with a little bit more of a pie in the sky. What does the end in mind look like, and what should it feel like to our guests? And then really, I got kind of pushed back in my corner a little bit, and they're like, well, you don't have that much money. So making those compromises and trying to be judicious about what you tried to lead for. So minimum viable product. How many people here have a loyalty program now? Show of hands. How many people are thinking about a loyalty program? Okay, so, and then the people that don't have either, you don't have any plans for one, is that right? Yes, no?
Or they're just being shy.
Or they're being shy, yeah. No. Fair enough. So for us, coming up with like the business objective really first, and then making sure we were, laser targeted on what kind of guests that we had that we wanted to make sure we appealed to, and then build out solutions to actually address that need.
Awesome. So I know that you guys do your loyalty program with Paytronix, and I think I've got a slide. I'm going to step back. So you partnered with Paytronix to do the loyalty program, which is My PDQ Points. Why do you think that having a loyalty program, and for some of those folks in the audience that aren't even thinking about it, why do you think a loyalty program specifically is key to the digital transformation and to the business in general?
Well, for us, because especially during COVID, right? It's like you couldn't actually touch people. You couldn't see them, right? They were behind a mask if they were in the drive-through, or they would need to be able to order. And so all of a sudden, the extension of the relationship got pushed beyond our 4 walls and out into the digital ecosystem. So we had to go where they were. So you need a platform, which Paytronix does a great job for us. We have a bunch of other providers that have helped as well. If you go back one side.
Yep.
But like some of the other things, right? Other touch points that we had, we didn't really do any digital media advertising at the time either. So all of these things to try to surround the guest within the digital ecosystem of where they were, so go meet them where they were, was why we really wanted to have a loyalty program, because not only do we want to meet them, but then of course we wanted to kind of pull that first party data in so that we would have permission to continue that conversation in a digital way.
Awesome. And as part of that, you have the mobile app, the My PDQ Points mobile app. So you mentioned to me that previously you mentioned that the app allows you the opportunity for guest segmentation. Can you give us some examples of how you're using guest segmentation specifically with your mobile app and these examples that you have up there?
Yeah, so, and we'll get into the advanced segmentation in a couple more slides, but really we wanted something that had the flexibility to do the one-to-one personalization, right? I mean, you heard Julie talking about it next door. That's really the end in mind. So being able to get that straight out of the box was like bare minimum. That was part of our minimum viable product that we wanted to take to market, because if you don't have that one-to-one communication, how are you going to really pay off that people dedicated to quality thing? I can say, hey, everybody in a red shirt, I really, appreciate you as a customer, right? It doesn't really sound genuine. But if I say, hey, Chris, I really value your business, and, I like your red shirt. Those are the types of conversations that we want to have because that's what was happening inside our four walls, right? We knew people, we acknowledged them. We have like greeters in most of our locations that actually welcome people, not quite as aggressive as like Moe's or anything like that, but that same kind of philosophy of being able to do it in a digital way. And then well, what are those touch points? Well, we have the app. Well, the app should be just as smart as the operating director is who sees me come physically into the location. So putting the awards, the rewards, the LTOs, whatever messaging that we had, that we would have had as a talk track in person in front of them in a one-to-one capacity was really a high priority for us. And fortunately, we were able to do that today with the app and the mobile experience builder. And so we just gave away, like the middle one is the free shake. It was a surprise and delight that we did just a couple weeks ago. Results are phenomenal. We got like 15% visit lift and 10% spend lift just for giving away a free shake. I mean, cost of a shake, cost of goods sold, probably about 90 cents, something like that. So pretty good return on investment there. In our Winston-Salem location, we had double points for a special recipe. Texas Pete headquarters is right around the corner from our Winston-Salem store. So we did a collaboration with Texas Pete and the honey barbecue sauce, and then gave double points to everybody who ordered at that location only the Texas Pete sandwich. So that was those are just to kind of give you a flavor, sorry for the food pun, as to what kind of targeting that we wanted to do.
Awesome. So let's continue talking about targeting. You mentioned it already, advanced segmentation. So this is another way of just being more individualized and communicating with your PDQ guest. Can you talk to me about what actually goes into creating these specific audience segments or guest segments?
It's a lot of number crunching, looking at a lot of data, turning things on its side, looking at other third-party data too. I mean, we actually did a fair amount of assessment of our existing transaction base. We went and talked with Visa and got tokenized credit card insights, so we could kind of see an aggregate what we thought our definition of the average guest looked like, to make sure that we were kind of targeting the right people. Because remember, we didn't really have a lot of first-party data at that point in time. So figuring out who they are, where they are, validating that, do the journey mapping so you can actually see where the touch points are, and see if you have people, who's actually going into the locations, how far they're traveling. You could see that kind of detail, so we could see circumference of, travel time that people would actually endure to get to our locations. So day of week, time of day, what the order composition is, so we could actually do kind of menu clustering kind of targeting. Found out, use the survey tools that are built into the Paytronix platform to do, get insights as to why, how come you visited, and then on the other side of it, ask the people who haven't visited, why didn't you visit? What's wrong? What did we do wrong? Did we piss you off? Or have bad service experience? What was it, right? So finding out the what, where, and why, how was really kind of important for us to start. And then again, the outputs are kind of on the right-hand side, but what's kind of cool is it took about 3 months to really start to get like the segmentation insights kind of materialized to where there was enough numbers around the segments to be able to kind of action off of them. But then 6 months, then all of a sudden I'm like holding dollar signs up in front of my management of the value prop, because then I can calculate a customer lifetime value, right? And so those are the types of things. I had a lot, pain and suffering, education process with internal stakeholders. You've heard other people say, who should you bring along with a journey? For me, it was my president, my finance person, and the director of ops immediately, right? To bring them along the journey so that they were kind of co-authors to a lot of it. So there's two advantages to that, and I'm sorry, we'll just get to you in a second. Two advantages to that, where you bring them along. There's making them feel invested in the process, but then there's also accountability on the backside if things don't work. right? Because then everybody fails, right? It's not just Ken.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that I think we have a couple more slides on event segmentation. I'm familiar with these. You had RFM model on the outputs. Paytronix does a lot of this. My team does a lot of this. So were you showing these types of things to the executives that you just mentioned and walking through the details of what you were going to do?
Yeah. I mean, we had to in some instances because, you got the generic questions of like, how are you going to bring more people in and how are you going to get them to spend more, right? And you're like, well, there's a little bit of science behind it. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but hey, if I can break down what kind of menu items that people are ordering and how they're heat indexing towards one item versus another, if I'm going to introduce something new that takes advantage of one of those proteins, then I should actually message to them first or even survey them first and find out, what they think about it. And then with the RFM, it was really like how fast can you shorten the timeline from the first visit to the second visit to the third visit to the 15th visit, and then find out from people, which is crazy. In the first year, we had one guy who actually had 333 visits. I'm like, so we reached out to him. I knew who he was. I reached out to him like, dude, why do you love the brand so much, And it turns out he would stop at one location, coming and going from work every day. And so we were his kitchen table, more or less, right? So having the insight to be able to tell stories like that to my bosses while dazzling them with these kind of 3D kind of images of like recency, frequency, monetary value, but then also be able to kind of monetize it and show the ROI of the investment of not only me and then the ability to be able to hire more staff, right? So I have a team of 2 besides myself. But then with the help of the Paytronix folks, we're able to do all this.
Awesome. Tell me about this slide.
Yeah, so this is our rudimentary segmentation, right? So believe me, there's a lot more numbers in the background. This is my way of simplifying it for my management, so they would actually grasp the fact of what we were doing. Is that we're bringing people into the funnel, bringing them into the fold, getting them to visit more, spend more, and then they become like your elite member of your loyalty, either based on spend, engagement, or frequency. And then, if they're falling away from you, if they're lapsing, in what capacity could I bring them back? Revive them? What kind of offers do I have to put in front of them? What kind of food? Why? And then I can also find out for those people that are at the far right-hand side, why'd you leave? And then this is the kind of slide that senior management likes to see, is that, hey, we launched a loyalty program. What's it going to bring in future value? And it's a nice hockey stick. So, they called BS on it a couple times, but then I showed them how the numbers were kind of backed into, because I could show them what each segment value was and how it contributed to that. And then really we're no different than probably any other business in here. It's, 20% of the customers are bringing you 80% of the revenue. And the benefit that we have now is I know exactly who the top 20% are, and I know what dials and what levers I can flip within the targeting capability, messaging. So like I know day of week, your favorite day of week's Friday, I can send you a message on Monday and then maybe squeak out another visit out of you in a month. Instead of getting 1 a week, I can get 5 and probably stole share from somebody else who they might have gone to instead.
Yeah, awesome. So loyalty program for PDQ is really allowing you to communicate with your guests, but you're getting very granular with the data and how you can segment to them.
Yeah, so this plays back into my admittance of being an aviation geek, is I geek out on stuff like this, right? I mean, I've been around it pretty much my entire, professional life, at least getting paid for it. So that's one of the things that I like to do, is I like to get people, I use the visual with the management team. I'm like, you take the customer and you shake them upside down gently, and then you turn them back, around, give them some free food, and they go on their way. But it's really about getting more money for people in a way that delights them, doesn't piss them off, they feel valued, and then actually they give you loyalty, right? I don't do loyalty. They give me loyalty because of the way I treat them. and you've heard, again, constant themes across a lot of the presentations, respect, inclusion, all of those elements of a relationship are actually, we're actioning off of from a digital standpoint to make that all happen. And so it's been very beneficial for the company. It's significant contribution to the incrementality and the traffic that we're seeing on a regular basis. So hopefully I'll get to keep my job for a little longer.
Awesome, awesome. I saw some of you already clicking the QR code. This QR code has a number of case studies that have done exactly what PDQ has done. Maybe not exactly the same as PDQ, but from a guest engagement perspective. I'll bring this up again at the end, but just wanted to mention some ways of driving guest engagement. And then innovation into action, Ken. Some final thoughts here. What impact do you feel that everything from a digital transformation perspective has really had on PDQ? Specifically, as all of us have even noticed here at this conference, there's a lot of competition from a chicken landscape perspective. So tell us about, final thoughts. I think there might even be an ROI slide that we have at the end here I can flip to.
Yeah, so, well, let's look at this. So these are just kind of some images, some representation. One of the big things that I like to point out in the top right-hand corner here with the little blue circle, that's kind of like our guest sentiment tracking. The other little circle to the right of it and a little bit lower happens to be Chick-fil-A. So I'm punching way above my weight with the way that I'm managing the relationship with the guest, such that our operators are delivering on it, and I'm able to kind of set and help manage expectations on the digital side going in. But we're outpacing Chick-fil-A, which to me, I'm like, yeah, right? I mean, that's what I want to do, right? Popeyes and KFC are down in the lighter shaded area. But for me, that's like one of the biggest successes. Not only the anecdotal kind of feedback and reviews from Google and the like, and reading those, for the exact context of it, but the aggregated numbers of rating us against our competitors, the comp set, I think is one of the things we're most proud of. So, and some of the other things are like how I can choose. I mean, the flexibility that the Paytronix platform has is enough for us right now. I mean, I still have more runway of things that I could do with the functionality, but figuring out, getting it integrated into like our, digital displays when you walk in. So things that we want to do are simple things like the ticker board. So like the digital display boards would acknowledge you coming into the geo fence, right? Making sure that, we alert you when your food's going to be ready from interactive map. Or even going so far as to the digital media we place, making sure that we're reminding you where the closest location is to you in a graphical sense where you can click on the map very easily. So really just trying to figure out what is that need set that Sandy and Joe need to have satisfied in order to get them to come in. And then, so the next screen actually shows some of the kind of results. And so some of the early wins were getting our email open rate. Our open rates are regularly above 50%. So a lot of traction with our guests in terms of the content that we're putting out there. Our customer satisfaction has gone up 13%. Our click-through rates with all of our digital media. We've been able to decrease the wait times, right? Because people are ordering online and they're not standing in line, or they're not standing in they're not in the drive-through, right? So I'm displacing some of those guests because they want to come in and pick up instead of go through the drive-through, because we only have a one-lane drive-through model, unfortunately. We're looking at trying to do like others and get 2 lanes. But labor savings, because we're able to kind of turn things around faster because of digital efforts. Part in some of the other things, I mean, the results are kind of obvious to see from the financial profitability standpoint. But so we stood up online ordering, loyalty, created all the advanced segmentation. We actually changed out our point of sale system in the middle of all of this across all 62 locations. So we migrated from PosiTouch to Revel. to make things a little bit easier on us and integrate there on that end as well. And then there's a bunch of other things that are coming that are exciting from our standpoint, but all in the mind of extending that dedication to quality and delighting our guests, not just in the physical sense, but then also in their digital interaction with us.
Awesome. Wonderful. I think that's the end of everything. Thank you so much. This has been a great chat.
The end of everything?
Everything.
Or just this session?
The end of this session, but if you've got final thoughts before we truly, truly end everything.
Final thoughts. Honestly, I think Sam at lunch made a very good point, right? During the pandemic, the shit hit the fan, right? And so as an organization, you have two options, right? Lay down and roll over or fight, right? And so we took the stance on making sure that we could actually have our brand succeed and did our best to do it. So keeping on plugging, right? Everybody here is smart. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. If you don't think that you're going to be able to get it done, you're wrong. Just keep trying, right? And so that goes from the high level kind of comment, but then also to testing and learning, right? Those are the big things that we continue to do to figure out what the next big thing is with our guests is the test and learn strategy.
Awesome. I think we have maybe a minute for some questions, and if we don't get to your questions here, Ken will actually be in the Paytronix booth right after this, if you guys want
They're paying me for that.
to talk more. Yes.
So the app is, it's app. We have push messaging. We don't really rely on SMS too much. We have the capability. It just hasn't been a priority for us because Sandy, who's our archetype, and Joe Lunchbucket don't really care for texts that are not that high maintenance. So they open the app because they know the offers are going to be there all in one thing. There is an awful lot of competition for, pop-up screen real estate. I mean, I have a bunch of restaurant apps on my phone, and it's lighting up all day. I usually just swipe, right, because I don't really, but the apps that I do use, I open. So fortunately for us, 80% of the people who signed up for our loyalty program are using an app to engage with us. We went from 0 to 300,000. We just surpassed 300,000 people in our database. So that's kind of what we've been continuing to grow. So we still have more people to capture and more people to delight with our food.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kristin from Paytronix.
Thank you.